What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to a new video. So today we're going to jump back in and do a little bit of maintenance on the SRT-4. I was taking it out for a ride earlier in the week and I started having a pretty serious vibration from the front end of the car. Brought it back in and found that both front calipers had seized up. So I, off camera, found a set of new old stock OEM calipers from Mopar. I have them installed here already, but now what I want to do is go ahead and change out the pads and rotors. The front pads and rotors did get very hot when that caliper was seized. Both sides actually were locked up, so I want to go ahead and get those changed out. I got a new set of OEM pads and rotors from the dealer. They are somehow still available for both the front and the rear, so I'm going to go through and put them in, get the calipers taken off, get new pads and rotors put in all the way around, and take it out for a test drive. I did also get 2 rebuild kits with new pistons and seals for the original calipers that came off the car. All of the brake setup on this car is still factory original, where the car is so low miles, 36,000 miles on the vehicle. Everything is still the factory original parts on here. So I want to rebuild these calipers. Was able to get 2 rebuild kits for them. I'm going to clean them up. Already popped out the old pistons. You can see the little ridge of rust that was built up on there, but I'll do a little bit more in-depth work on these later on in the video. First, I want to go ahead and get these pads and rotors changed out, so I'm going to get this thing jacked up, pull the wheels, and we'll get started on it right away. All the wheels off, we're going to start taking apart the brakes. The brake setup on these cars is very simple. 2 12mm bolts for the pins to hold the caliper to the bracket. I'm going to pop those out. I'm going to depress the caliper first. So we can easily pull it off once we take out the slide pin bolts. I did pull the cap on the master cylinder reservoir up there so we can bleed back our pressure that's in the calipers physically. And so now I'm just gonna buzz these 2 bolts out and get the caliper out of the way. I am gonna set it aside on a hook so that we don't put any stress on the line here. There are 2 little springs on the top of the pads once the caliper's together, and it does kind of give a little bit of push out. The caliper will spring out under the tension of those springs once you take the bolts out for the slides. And as easy as that, I will go ahead and depress that piston manually the rest of the way. Once we have our new pads in there, the caliper will not clear the thickness of the new pads if it's not compressed back into the caliper all the way. Caliper is out of the way, got it hooked up to the spring up there. We can remove our pads from the bracket. They simply just slide out. The new pad kit does come with new hardware. So these can come out as well. We won't be reusing those. We'll be installing the new ones once again. Set those out of the way. And now we're going to get in the back side here. I believe these are 17s. I don't remember off the top of my head. 2 17mm bolts hold the caliper bracket to the knuckle. Once we get the caliper bracket out of the way, we'll be able to remove the rotor and replace it with a new one. These caliper bracket bolts are 18s. Having a swivel wrench or a ratchet wrench like this will make getting the upper one much easier out. It is blocked by the bolt for the strut. I don't know why they decided to do it that way, but that's what you got to deal with. The bottom one is free access. You don't need to use anything special. You can get in there with a regular wrench and impact, whatever works. But this makes this a lot easier to get this one broken free. This bolt also doesn't come out all the way, so you're able to just slide the caliper bracket out here, and once it gets reloaded and everything, new hardware, and goes back in, you can just slide the bracket back in and thread the bolt in. This way the bolt doesn't actually come out completely due to the lower strut bolt, as we mentioned before. Alright, everything looks good here. I'm gonna clean up this mating surface a little bit, just a little bit of surface rust. Want to get that taken care of, and then we'll go ahead and put the new rotor. The hub is all cleaned up. Put a light layer of brake slide grease on there, just to prevent any, surface rust bonding to the new rotor. We got our new pads here with the new hardware kit, and we got our new rotor ready to go. Gonna get that popped on. And now we're gonna get our new hardware installed into our brake caliper bracket. Alrighty, so we got the bracket installed. The spec for the bracket bolt torque for the SRT-4 is 77 foot-pounds. That is different from the regular Neon. The regular Neon does not use a front bracket. The caliper sits on the knuckle itself. The slides are part of the knuckle. So we got that torqued, and now it's time to put the pads in. In order to get a torque wrench in here, you do need to loosen the bottom strut mount bolt and slide it back just enough. You don't need to take it out all the way, just enough so you can get a straight shot with a socket onto that bolt. Like we said, our access is completely blocked with anything other than a ratcheting wrench to get into that. Time to grab our new pads. There is an inner and an outer pad for the front. You can denote that by the wear indicator. This one goes on the inside. And then our pad without the wear indicator goes on the outside. All right, and now we are ready to put the caliper back in. Grab 2 new bolts. Dodge does not offer a specific torque spec for these bolts, so we're just gonna make sure that they're roughly where we felt them come off. My guess is it's around 20 pounds, but we're gonna, don't quote me on that, we're gonna just, torque them to a spec where it feels like they're good and tight, not gonna mess up the slides or anything, or the bolt. Press the caliper piston back in the rest of the way. I like to just take the old pad and set it against the face of the piston, and then I'll use some sort of channel lock or a C-clamp just to grab around the back of the caliper, and we'll push it right back in. While we're in here, we want to be inspecting the seal, make sure we don't see any fluid pockets in the seal or anything, any rips, tears, or anything. Once we get this pushed back in, slid back in as it should, brand new caliper. Now it is time to get this reinstalled. If I can do this one-handed, it'll be a miracle. slide both slides in at the same time. And the bottom one is hanging me up. I'm gonna need 2 hands for this. Just like that, she's all back together, new bolts installed, all is good. Now we're just gonna basically set up a time lapse on the other side and repeat the process. Both fronts all set, that's taken care of, new pads and rotors installed. Now it's time to move on to the back. The back is a little bit simpler. There's no caliper bracket to deal with back here. It's just 2 10mm slide bolts on the knuckle, and I'm going to do the same process, compress the caliper, undo the 2 bolts, and then the caliper comes right off. We don't have to remove any brackets to get the rotor off. The rotor will just come off once the caliper is removed. So I'm going to get those 2 10s out, and then we're going to get the caliper off of here, and this should go pretty straightforward once I can find the tool I need. So you can do the same thing, just pop right in here and slide the caliper right back to its home position. Socket. I'm gonna get these pads out of here. I'm gonna need 2 hands to do it. I can't hold the camera and do it at the same time. And then I will get the caliper hung up on the strut the same way I did up in the front. Like that, we got the pads out. These ones are real easy to distinguish. The ones that look like this and have this spring clip on the back go on the piston side, the inside. Those snap into the piston itself. And then this one with the 3-pointed spring clips over the outer portion of the caliper right here. Just got to be careful to not scratch the paint on these if you still care about, you know, keeping the car nice. Got to make sure that we don't scratch any of the paint on the calipers. And now we're going to get this hung up top. As you can see, I lay down some sort of protective, you know, towel, whatnot, on the top of the backing plate so I don't scratch the back side of the caliper either. And now this rotor should come off. You're going to want to make sure that the emergency brake is off from the center console. That will hold this rotor right in its home if it's not released. There we are. While I'm in here, I'm going to adjust the parking brake a little bit. The shoes are still in perfect shape. I'm going to go in and clean all this up. Shoes look good. Just going to use the little star adjuster right here and back these out a little bit. I did see, you know, when I was loading the car on the tow truck and whatnot, that when it was tipped down, and the brake engaged, the car would roll a little bit. So I want to just make sure that that's working fully to its potential. We don't need the car rolling away anywhere while it's in neutral. So I'm going to get all this cleaned up, clean up the slides back here, lubricate them, and then we'll start going back together with new parts. Thought this was pretty cool. See these labels on these things. These pads and rotors were produced in '09, still out there. Surprised Mopar still has them around for these cars, but it's great to see that they still have parts available for them. Gotta watch out for that. On the lower slide, the boot popped off when it was going back in. These slides need to be pushed all the way out so that they clear the knuckle when we go back together. Bottom of the caliper slides onto the slide at the bottom first, and then we have to pull the slide back underneath so it slides onto the knuckle, and then pull off the top slide so the top slides in just like that. Keep everything as clean as possible. They do not give you new bolts for the rear slides, so we will reuse the bolts that came with the car from the factory. Just snug them up when they come. All right, one side is complete. Now it's time to move over to the passenger side of the car and do the same thing. Alrighty guys, so we got all 4 wheels worth of brakes done on the SRT-4. Everything is good to go. Now at this point is when you're going to want to check your brake fluid level. If you've done any brake work in the past, etc., drained any out, exchanged some, you're always going to want to top it off when the pads are at full life. So the next time, you know, somebody goes in to do a brake job and they compress the calipers or they top it off, you know, if you go in for an oil change, etc., they're not overfilling it and then it comes back to bite the next person when it overflows the reservoir the next time a caliper gets compressed again. So I'll double check that. I did put the new calipers on, so I want to make sure that my fluid level is good with new full life pads. And then I will put the wheels back on. The wheels on the SRT-4, the lug nuts get torqued to 100 foot-pounds. So I'm going to get all those put back on, lower it down, and we'll take it for a quick test drive. And I'm also going to do a quick oil change for it. You can see brake fluid reservoir and clutch fluid reservoir are full with fresh and clean fluid. So we're good to go here. Put the cap back on. All set, and now we're ready to pump the brake, get pressure back up in the calipers, and get the wheels back on and take it for a quick drive. Brake work, you guys know, before you take it for a drive or before you move the car at all, we're going to want to pump up the brake again so all the calipers are actually touching, and we have a firm pedal once again before we even move the vehicle, because it can sneak up on you. Sometimes you'll, you know, get in, oh, let me throw it in gear, back out, and the first time you hit the brake, you don't have fully functioning brakes yet. So need to make sure we have that pedal built back up and it feels nice and solid now, so we're ready to take a drive. So I like to personally pull the filter first, because with the filter in the way, it makes it more difficult to access the drain plug with a socket and a ratchet, which is my preferred way of getting contact on the drain plug. So I like to pull the filter first, let it drain, get it out of the way, and then once it has left its home, to pull the drain plug. Let's get this out of here and we can grab that plug. Yeah. Raise this catch pan back up. And here we go. We've only put about 400 miles on this car since I rebuilt it. It should look pretty clean. Yeah, it's still very clean. Good. Looks good under here. That's how I hoped it would look. New Mopar oil filter and some 530 Pennzoil Ultra Platinum ready to go in the SRT-4. Drain plug installed, and these torque to 20 foot-pounds. Now we will grab our filter. I've already lubricated the gasket. Gonna clean off the face of the housing real quick, and we are ready for our new filter to go to its home. And only hand tight on the filter. There is no need to use any sort of wrench or tool to tighten these down. They will be impossible to get off if you over tighten them. This is common knowledge for all oil changes. 5 quarts of fresh oil in there per spec. We've checked the level, all is good. It is now time to take this thing for a ride and check out the new brakes. Make sure everything is working properly. back from our test drive. Everything went perfectly. The SRT-4 seems and sounds happy. So I hope you guys found this video helpful or interesting. As always, drop a like down below, share a comment, share the video with a friend if you think they'll like this content, or if they know somebody else that might. As always, you guys, thank you so much for watching. Thanks for tuning in to myself and the SRT-4 as usual. Sitting there just idling, cooling off after a little run. Thing's doing great so far. As always, you guys, thank you so much for watching and have an awesome day.